Welcome to Out of This World. I'm Jamie Hanshaw, and today is going to be another show in our uh, Rizz Collapse Crisis series, Gender Wars Between Men and Women. And I brought my good friend, Dr. Deacon Ananias, Father Dr. Deacon Ananias, who is a professor of ethics at Carroll College in Montana. And we are going to be talking about the ethics of love, the ethical Rizzler. How about that? Because did you hear what happened to me this week?
I didn't.
Did you
What
hear
happened?
I finally did something interesting on Twitter.
Yes, I did see that, and it got
Oh, okay.
the about the spider what would you call that?
Spider
What is
reason.
the spider reasoning?
Yeah.
Um the spider pickup lines?
Yes. Okay. So, I will spend months researching something really deep, and I'll get like a presentation together that's like fire, and I'll come on here and I'll spend 3 hours talking about it and I'll upload it, and it gets, 20 hearts and, 5 shares and 2 comments. And I just spent months doing this, right? But I make one little joke on somebody else's post, and it's gotten almost 1 million views now.
It's crazy.
So let me just read it if you're not
Yeah,
on
please read it.
Twitter, and so all you guys know what we're talking about. So here's what well, somebody said, where is it? Basically, like, oh, why, if there are so many right-wing men, why are all the right-wing women single?
Mm-hmm.
And my joke was, it was meant to be just like lighthearted, haha, but I got so much hate from posting this. All I said was, when a young man at our church finally got an opportunity to have a conversation with his crush, his opener was, "So what is your favorite kind of spider?" I hope this gives some insight. So it's just a little chuckle, right?
I know.
Hee hee. But Father, let me tell you some of these
Hate
comments that I got back.
comments. Yeah.
Jamie will be perpetually unforgiving and ungracious and wander aimlessly uninformed as to why the perfect man doesn't appear in her life. The wall and her cats might give her a hint at some point. Um, Someone called me a feminist whore. Let's see. You're a depraved individual. You seethe with contempt for any semblance of innocence. There's more mean tweets, but you get the point. So just,
Now, Jamie, what did you learn?
yeah,
Obviously, don't make fun of children's spiders for the
I
love
am
of.
the freaking nicest person. You know me, right? You're my friend. We've hung out several times, extended periods of time.
Yep.
I do not have a mean bone.
Yeah.
I
You don't at all. Yeah.
I don't mock people. I don't make fun of them. I don't put them down. Like, part of my morning prayers is help me not to embarrass people, right? Um, but I just got so much like vitriol just from this one little joke. I was like, the people on the internet are not okay.
No, they need to
Right.
be. They need a mental rehabilitation program or
And
something. I don't know what's going on.
and they're saying this is a bitter old lady who hates love, and you know, a feminist trying to shame young men for wanting to get married. And I'm like, you guys are crazy. So before we get started with Father Deacon, um, I'd like to share with you guys, in the spirit of humility, because I was called pretentious.
Your
My
love of spiders.
no, well, I do have a point about that, but my first time trying to impress a boy that I had a crush on went horribly, horribly wrong as well. And so I just thought people find it funny. We've all been there looking awkward in front of somebody that we fancy, right? So when I was in about sixth, seventh grade, teenager, enough to feel a crush in your guts. You really like this person, right? His name was Donnie Mock. I thought he hung the moon. And I saved all of my lunch money for a week because I heard he likes Snickers bars. And I bought him like a group of Snickers bars, like 10 or 12, like big king size candy bars. And that's like a big deal when you're a kid, right? The king size, because they're like $1 each.
Yep.
Well, I bought him all these candy bars and I gave them to his brother and I said, go give these to your brother and tell him they're for me. Cute, right? And I was hiding behind a tree, like that meme, like that black guy behind the tree, like watching to see if he's gonna like if his eye light up or if it touched him or if he's like, go tell Jamie thank you and whatever. So I'm watching this all go down. His younger brother goes up to him, hands him all of these candy bars, and his face is like, whoa, yeah, what is this? And I noticed him explaining to him who gave him all of this, and all the guys are standing around, a group of boys. He hands them the candy in front of all the guys, and he says, well, it was Jamie. And his face goes, ugh. And they threw the candy on the ground, and all the boys started stomping on the candy.
Oh my gosh.
So did I say let's burn the world down? No. I take my L and I go home and I decide I will never initiate anything else with a guy unless he's interested in me first, because that was probably the most embarrassing thing like that can happen.
But
Because
those embarrassing moments are great because after you have enough of them, you're like, I don't even care what
yeah,
I don't even care anymore if this person's like, ew,
yeah.
right?
But for a
Whatever.
13-year-old girl, and
But
now
for
all the boys
yeah,
in class have stomped on your candy bars
it
and
was
embarrassed
devastating.
you. So I know what it's like to have a crush on somebody. I know what it's like to look awkward. I know what it's like to not know what to say. And so I made this for y'all that we're going to get into later on because it's just
Nice.
funny. It's just jokes, you guys. I don't hate men. I love men in theory and practice. I'm good friends with them. I support them. But remember that the dentist system in It's Always Sunny? He has that like the dentist system to get girls. So I made
Oh yeah.
the spiders that we're gonna go over later on. But first, I kind of want to be a little serious and talk about ethics for a minute because the world is getting really intense and the gender war is getting very intense. And if we lose World War III, it's going to be because Western men and women couldn't.
Wait, what? We're gonna have
Yeah, if we lose
I
this,
know, I get
yeah, it's going to be because, Western men and women could not get it together.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so I brought you on specifically because I want to talk about ethics, and I know you're so good at explaining. You're an Orthodox clergy and an ethics professor. So who better to talk about what is ethical when dealing with, well, let's just get out right into it. Governing people, right? So if you live in a patriarchy, let's say, and they're supposed to be governing women, but if we're Christian, we also want to, part of that is allowing people to have free will.
Mhm.
So what are the guidelines between allowing people to choose and what's good for society? And I wanted to bring up the 4B movement in South Korea. Have you heard of that?
Mhm.
So what this is their birth rates are super scary low. Um, the women have decided, a lot of women, now this is a feminist movement in South Korea, that they do not want to date, they don't want to have babies, they don't want to get married, and they don't want to have sex. And all of these things start with a B in Korean. So they're like, all of these things, 4B, no. And it's catching some momentum. If you wanted to have the equivalent over here in the West, it'd be like the bear movement, choose the bear. You've heard of that, I'm sure, right?
Like the MGTOW of the feminist.
Yeah, we talked about this with Father Moses, choose the bear. So, like, the hypothetical question was, if you were alone in the woods, would you rather be alone with a man or a
Mhm.
bear? And a lot of women are like, well, bears are less scary than what a man could do to you. Um, So I guess my first question, ethical question, is what can Korean men do? Because some of the solutions they're coming up with are more problematic than the actual problem. And that's what I wanted to talk about with like feminism too, because it seems like the final solution to feminism is going to be something like Islam, the gay lifestyle, or synthetic AI companions, sex bots and stuff like that. And the solutions they were proposing in Korea to get women to have children was, well, maybe we could just legalize grape.
Legalize what?
Grape,
What is grape?
take the G off.
Oh, you think, yeah, got it.
So if
So
if we if
fire
we
birth.
had that, maybe that would solve our baby making problem over here. So it's like how can you force someone to do the right thing? You can't. And so what do men have as options if women don't want to have anything to do with them?
Well, I was actually thinking when you were talking about this is that not only does it not only these bad kind of lifestyle and ethical choices lead to more, it opens up like a Pandora's box. It also does the crisis reaction solution. And so there's this reaction that's going to come, which is exactly just the opposite of, it's not a tempered, it's not a middle road, it's not a royal path. It's like you said, something like grape, or total totalitarian imprisonment, or whatever the that often happens, historically speaking, that if you go too extreme in the other direction, and we've allowed this to kind of happen socially and politically and morally, it will create an opposite reaction, which is just the opposite of what you want. And then, of course, the elites could be like, oh, that's wonderful, because that's a collapse of society, community, person, the human being, in which they have a solution for that. So I think that's an extreme danger
Mhm,
when these kind of movements, because that's the temptation, right? Is just like, well, let's just use force and fix it.
mhm,
Like you said, it's like, but you can't really do that. And I'm not saying there aren't situations to use obviously force, and it's just absolute unbridled libertarian freedom or something like that. But the opposite, purely reactive, is just as devastating, plays into the hands of those coming up with a solution,
mhm,
shall we say. So that's a concern for me. Um, and like I said, the other things that it just opens up other kind of immoral and incorrect ideologies and lifestyles.
mhm. So if you're dealing with a group that can enforce rights or unenforce them or literally overpower you to force you to do things, I don't know how to formulate a question around this. It's like, is it okay to force a woman to have a family if she doesn't want one?
No, I don't think. I mean, there's obviously areas where in law we would want to force people to do certain things. That doesn't seem um, that doesn't seem right. I mean, how would that? I mean, do you know what I mean?
Mhm,
Doing that, yeah, I would definitely agree, would be a wrong. It'd be like a double wrong.
mhm.
I mean,
So,
think about, for example, as clergy, we want people to do, and I know the political sphere is different, because they can do more of this stuff and clergy really don't. We advise. Um, but can you imagine if we clergy force people to go to church and force them to have families or force them confess. Like it would be awful.
You can't,
You
right?
can't do it.
Because those things come from love. You want to go to confession because you love God. You want to go to liturgy. You want to do these things. If it was forced, it would
It wouldn't be
be
love.
for nothing, right? So, even if their culture is going to die out, can they take it back by force ethically?
Um,
Maybe in a secular paradigm,
it
yeah,
would
but
be,
in a
yeah.
Christian paradigm.
It's crazy too because we have to understand that even where we live in a fallen world.
Mhm,
Um, a representative democracy is not an ideal system. It's never sanctioned by the church. Only a Byzantine monarchy has ever been sanctioned by. Yet at the same time, we know that God has instituted authorities and that we work within the system that's completely fallen. Some are a lot worse than others.
mhm,
We can't become anarchists. And what's interesting about that then is with regards to this, like, well, what do you do? Do you let your culture die out? Um, but that is an issue. I mean, if they forced, it would be, it's a handmaid's tale, right?
mhm, mhm,
Forced birthers.
mhm,
Um, Obviously, that would be separated from any semblance of a marriage and love. And yeah, I'm trying to just conceive of like some far out situation where that would even be ethical to actually do something like that. And part of the problem is because that act is so precious,
mhm,
life, that you you can't force that kind of stuff. Like it becomes extreme perversion.
mhm,
Would have really negative consequences too, I think, and reactions to that. Um, However, the state could obviously, the easiest way is to provide incentives.
mhm,
So I don't even understand why they would even be talking about like we have to have handmaid's tale or whatever when most people will take the incentives.
mhm,
There's financial incentives. Let's say there's upward social mobility incentives. Um, so notice you're not forcing, but and this is really kind of a better way to look at the state on most issues rather than forcing people. You provide a parameter and structures in which somebody can rightly choose virtue and choose the right actions,
mhm,
and you're rewarded for it.
mhm,
When you do that, you benefit from. That's probably the best way. Also, what you can do as far as control is I'm not against censorship at all. Like, me, I've long gone are the days when I was a libertarian.
mhm,
So I have no problem with censorship if it's done by the right people for the right reasons, um, and the right kind of overall. And I'm not a consequentialist utilitarian. Okay. Um, and we could talk about that later, that it might kind of sound utilitarian, but no, it's like if that is going to preserve your society,
mhm,
that you bet like these ideas are just not allowed to be talked about or promulgated. If you have control of the media and education, where that's not allowed,
mhm,
I'm totally fine with that. And that the education, because it's going to have to start with prohibiting wrong ideas that are extremely dangerous. I mean, we do this, right? Like, this shouldn't be a shock to people that I think most people could think in their mind of ideas that should never be allowed, maybe inciting violence or something like that. Well, if it's a grave enough issue that your society's dying, you have a Malthusian death cult, and your ideology is antinatalism, um, these AI sex bots, all this, it's an ideology of death.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it's going to destroy your. Um, why are you going to be arguing about libertarianism? Like, who cares? And freedom.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, just ban that stuff. Now, you're not forcing somebody to do something, but it's like, just as your children, it's like, if I had children, I'd be like, absolutely not. This stuff is not allowed in the household.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fine. And then a good education system. And a good education system is one that instills both intellectual and moral virtues,
Mm-hmm.
just like a parent. And this is a paternalistic kind of notion of the state and society, which I have no problem with. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think most Orthodox Christians should have a problem with that. Or
Because
also,
I'm kind of doing a microcosm macrocosm thing here. Like, what authority does the state have over its citizens? What authority does a husband have over a
yeah.
wife?
Mhm.
And these are kind of going to be correlating because a lot of states are also set up in a religious paradigm too, like Islam. So I don't know if you heard what just happened in Afghanistan recently.
Maybe. Just
Uh,
remind me.
so they just voted that women can't go outside without a man. Every piece of skin has to be covered. They cannot be found talking in public. They cannot hear a woman's voice in public or she'll be punished. Singing, talking, laughing, nothing. Just basically, you are erased from society altogether. And this is just a couple days ago, the Taliban did this. So Afghani women are under a extremely demonic, oppressive patriarchy. And a lot of people in the West are looking like at that, and then they look at us and they're like, this is what you want to bring here.
Oh,
You know what I mean? You want your women to wear head covers. They can't do this. They can't do that. Can't. Okay, that's all I'm hearing. Like women can't do all of these things. So what can they do? And if you take all of these things to their like logical extension, it's going to end up like women are erased from society, and all of the therefore is, childbearing and domestic labor.
I'm curious to know too. I'd like to hear somebody from supporting this. Why? Like, why? Like, what's the rationale and reasoning behind doing that? Um, Now I imagine ultimately it's
You know,
going to be
Islamic
rooted.
person, why do they do those things? Like
Yeah,
make
like
uh-huh.
why? So is it fear of is it reactionary? Is it fear of kind of like Western influences? Is it, I mean, it still doesn't even make sense if if like you were to say like, well, this is a woman's place to then do that. Like that's, there's got to be more to the story. And I'm just actually claiming ignorance. I don't actually know. I'm sure they have some silly reasoning behind this, but it seems crazy, right? That it's um why does every like inch have to be covered? Why are like they can't speak or something? Um I think obviously it's going to be rooted in incorrect anthropology
Mm-hmm.
of human beings in general.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously, I mean, think about it, it's a heresy. And once it's a Christian heresy in the sense that it's a heresy from Christianity coming out of like certain Christian ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And every heresy is a perversion of that. So if the, within terms of gender, like what does it mean to be a woman and what does it be a man? Everything outside of orthodoxy, every answer to that is heretical and perverted. Now,
Mm-hmm.
maybe in, just like philosophies and religions in various degrees, that obviously me looking at the Salvation Army, I don't think that's the perversion at the level of Neanderthal pagan dirt worshippers, right?
Hmm.
It's like, yeah, I'd prefer to have Salvation Army folk living next to me than Midsummer uh, folk, which I just watched the other night. Like, that's a great thing for all you pagan LARPers to watch is Midsummer. Like, that's a society
Yeah.
definitely going to let that happen. And we're talking about in terms of like the reason why I'm bringing that up is in
Hmm.
terms of like what is right society, what is it right marriage, what is the right roles of gender, the male and female. Um, Only in Orthodox you're going to find that.
Hmm.
So, what does every heretic do? And I'm talking about every political regime, every religion and philosophy is a heresy. It takes something of the truth and it distorts it.
Hmm.
It it takes it out of its context. It absolutizes the part as the whole, whatever, and then you get exactly what you see, where you have an Afghan or India's a lot like that. It's not as bad, but
No, I'm glad you brought that up because there is a huge story coming out of India this week. Um, and anybody who's been to India recently, like the posts are almost comical. Like they're like, I'm here in India, and then the next day they're like, I just got sexually assaulted.
yeah.
But they actually kidnapped a female doctor and they assaulted her so hard that her pelvis was broken. Her glasses were crushed in her eyes. She did not survive. So there was like strikes, there was riots, there was doctors going on strike saying cannot happen. Um, there's instances where they will gang rape you there in India, and then you go home, and then they kill you because you have brought shame upon your family. And where was I going with this? Just the entire culture in India is about teaching women how not to get raped instead of teaching men to just not do that. So it's a really weird, and that's what they say when they cover up the women in the Middle East, it's for your own protection, right? But they don't teach boys just don't do that. They teach girls don't let this happen to you, and I think that's kind of weird. And then I just saw another photo where they are uh, requiring the burqa or the full thing, I don't know what it's called. Yeah. On like little girls as young as 5 years old, and it's like, so this is put on so the men don't lust after you, but so why do you have to put it on a 5-year-old? That sounds really weird.
Also, keep in mind too, in both those cultures, um, inherent within their theology and social rules and philosophy is slavery.
You're right.
They fully condone slavery at all levels.
Mhm.
So they don't. So think about this in Christianity. When we quote the scripture that there is neither male nor female, no Greek nor Jew, we don't mean all are just one blob, right? There aren't ethnicities and man is a woman and woman. What does that verse obviously mean? And it's in terms of dignity and salvation.
Mhm.
That salvation is not simply for the Jews, um, and the dignity is of all, that all are children of God, equally so.
Mhm.
Um,
And but that's what they were saying on that spider post, like women aren't people. Women don't deserve this. They're second class
that's what I'm
species.
saying. That comes from these other kind of societies and religions that are nowhere present in Christianity
Mhm.
whatsoever. And in fact, as you see in the Gospels, um, all of that, it's really kind of primitive, barbaric, kind of like desert. And I think all of the people, like at that level, like of within history,
Mhm.
I think people were just really primordial and primitive. They were barbaric in terms of warfare, like all kinds of different stuff in terms of slavery. Um, and obviously, God in the Old Testament isn't condoning anything. He's trying to lift a culture and people in the world out of that.
Hmm.
And so, just like a priest, if somebody said, "I can't do that, Father. I can't actually do that prescription. I can't do that fast," what do you think a priest is going to say? You're going to jail. That's the law.
Hmm.
Um, they'll say, "What can you do? Can you meet me here?" God's doing the same thing in the Old Testament, so it's not condoning any of these things. And you certainly see that through God's continual revelation to man's heart, and history brings them out, so that, remember what it says, in the fullness of time, Kairos, Christ came into the world, everything was just right. So what happens in the Gospels is women are elevated and actually shown by the divine authority of God. Why? The women apostles,
Hmm.
the myrrh bearers,
Hmm.
right? That the testimony is actually on the women. They're the first, right? And so all this stuff starts to come undone, and all to show what? Not that we're equal in all things. So notice the false kind of dialectics that obviously Jay and I always talk about. It's not an either or, right?
Hmm.
You can have equal equality in differences at the same time. Equality of what? Equality of dignity.
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean equality in terms of the nature of a male or female, or different contexts and stuff like that. So that's important. So notice those dialectics. It's either this or it's that. And so orthodoxy transcends that. You begin to see that in the gospel, that women have a specific role.
Hmm.
It's an equal dignity, but it's different.
Hmm.
Just
Um,
like we would do, just even within the same gender, people given different characteristics and talents and virtues, they're equal in dignity as a person, but you certainly don't put a person who's not suited to do a certain job.
mhm.
You realize, yeah, this is, even the way that I speak to somebody, I wouldn't speak to somebody in a certain way because I'm like, I know their characteristics, right? They're that bothers other people. I can be more blunt about.
Mhm.
So it's this idea, this like, either to kind of have something just ridiculous like this. These people, we believe in slavery, and all these people are second class citizens, and really property and object. And you really see, I think you see that in the Islamic countries, and also India.
Mhm.
Women are viewed as property. You don't talk to, do you have a conversation with objects?
No.
No, you don't have a conversation with objects. My brother and his wife did their honeymoon in India, and they told me that um, she was used to talking to people and like hailing a taxi or something like that. In India, they won't speak to the woman. So anytime she brought something up or asked a question about something, they spoke to the man. Well, she's property. She's an object. You
Mhm.
don't, and that disrespects the man. Anyways, it's all the kind of stuff that you were saying, and it's a heretical perversion of what gender and roles are, objective roles, I would say.
Do you find that attitude creeping into the West? Because I do, because
Absolutely.
I can't even go online anymore without being called a feminist whore. So it's like,
I notice particularly among the Zoomers.
uh-huh.
Um, and so the Z generation, and they're the ones who from infancy were brought up online on video, like in a digital, so they're socially maladapted, like they haven't learned actual social. And then unfortunately they were brought into a world of chaos
Mhm.
in which there's all these kinds of things. The upshot of that, I was talking with another professor, they can easily see through the BS.
Mhm.
Boomers can't.
Right.
Um, Millennials can't either, for other reasons. I think Gen Xers are better at being able to see that. The difference is the Zoomers are doomers. They're
Mhm.
black pilled,
Mhm.
and they, how do I put this? They see a world of chaos. This is exactly what's going to lead, like what leads people like over in Europe. I'm converting to Islam. Why?
Mhm.
Because of feminism.
Mhm.
Um,
You're
and
based.
Skittles, not knowing they're going to go like that religion allows Skittles and actually promotes it in,
Well, you've
which
heard
is,
of the dancing boys. I mean, it's not like they
yeah,
don't have these.
so stupid.
Yeah.
So, anyways, this is going on with the youth here and even the Orthodox
Mhm.
is they're tired of it. They're tired of seeing the postmodern deconstructionist liberal um, leftists, Skittles, and what do? Well, they're immature, first of all. They're not men. I was talking with Father Moses. For a man to be a man, we must accomplish something. We need a rite of passion, uh,
Passing.
passage, yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I mean, that's why, like, if I do something and I need my wife to say, I'm proud of you. I need my wife to recognize me. When she does, it empowers me. I'm
Mhm.
like, yes, I can go do anything. But if you haven't accomplished anything, right?
Mhm.
Um, because of insecurity, fear, social, right? That's why mostly people are staying in, you know, living with their parents the whole time. They've been coddled and told, you're special, and they're never given any hardship. They
Mhm.
haven't had to go through anything hard,
Mhm.
and so they're kind of just pampered. And yet they see a confusing, disordered world, and they see this kind of feminism. They haven't acquired the virtues because they haven't accomplished anything, and they haven't become men
Mhm.
to know how to respond to that. Now, all of us, like you said, at a young age, we're immature and dumb and make dumb decisions. We can't see the world correctly. Um, but compound this problem with all the stuff that the Z generation has inherited.
Mhm.
And what do? They're very, very ripe and apt to fall into extremes,
Mhm.
either or. I notice this philosophically, theologically, but in terms of the women, um, oh, it's isn't it easy just to sweep everything under with a broad brush, paint with a broad brush? Well, it's all this.
Mhm. Oh, yeah. I
Um,
mean, it's all the juice. It's all the,
exactly.
you know, feminists. It's
Oh,
like,
politics is all for the one I've been dealing with. It's all rigged and faked
yeah.
by the New World Order. Oh, really? Like, so there's no, it's just intellectual laziness and being immature. Um, and especially when we're angry or we're fearful or insecure, those are passions. When we act out of our passions, guess what we do? We act irrationally.
Mhm.
I do. That if I'm like, what a dumb, stupid thing, I'm confessing. And the priest is like, because you acted out of fear, you acted out of anger. I'm like, absolutely, it's totally irrational. So
Mhm.
they're doing the same thing. So they go into a very irrational um, hatred and MGTOWness of women.
Mhm. Well, and the
Um,
fear part too is because part of the whole anti-marriage thing is just the fear of divorce, but they're not that smart to get it. Like just because you get married doesn't mean you have a 50-50 chance
yeah,
of
I know.
divorcing. Like it's not, survivor. It's like you have things that you can do to mitigate your percentage of chance of this breaking up. So they're thinking like half of people have a 50-50 chance. Like it's not like,
Yeah.
you know. Well,
Anyways, I think that's what's going on, and so um, that's why you're getting this like hatred for women. By the way, congratulations, you are a feminist. You know why? Feminism whose seeds in creation were Simone de Beauvoir, was not a quality to elevate women.
Mhm.
It was a hatred of the feminine. If you
Mm.
study her philosophy,
Mhm.
she's no fan of the feminine. So
Interesting.
congratulations, MGTOW Zoomer Doomers. You're a feminist. You're with Simone de Beauvoir and the rest of those nutters.
That's a very good point. Feminists actually are anti-feminine.
Yes, they are. Absolutely.
Well, since you brought up Black Pill, let me play you this TikTok real quick because it's so crazy. It's exactly what you're saying about Zoomers. Let's see.
So the Black Pill ideology essentially says that your looks, specifically your face, are going to have an enormous impact on your life.
I've managed to track down one of the UK's most prominent Black Pill influencers. On Instagram, he promotes extreme techniques, all to try and get closer to Chad.
All the women in the world want the best looking men. If you understand the truth, you can then start to take actions to use it in your favor. It's not uncommon for people in the looks maxing industry to get a hammer and think, okay, what part of my face would I like to improve? My cheekbones, my jaw, my chin, my orbitals are just up and down, and the same with the brow bone, up and down, almost sculpting their face out of marble. And then, the bones just glow.
I don't know if that's entirely true. You know, I've fractured my knee, for example.
Precisely.
My knee is vulnerable to other breaks. So, but how do you know your bone's growing and your face just isn't swelling up because of you're hitting yourself with the whole?
I mean, swelling does certainly stay around for a few days, but
you've done it though.
I've done it, yeah.
What took you to the point of hitting yourself in the face with a hammer?
It was just results. I wanted to.
So, literally, this is what happens when you take too many red pills, right? If you take all the red pills
at once,
you're going to start hitting yourself in the face with a hammer.
Wow.
So, when I tell you guys that this stuff ends up in a not good place, then I'm the feminist bitch.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. Like, I didn't know what was going on at first when I was like, and then I was like, oh my God, he's actually smashing his face up.
So this is what happens to young men when they get in these groups, and it's almost like cannibalizing each other. So they can't pick on women anymore. Like, you know, all their body parts and everything. They like turned on themselves and started picking on themselves and made men as insecure as they had made women in the past.
Yep.
Does that make
Yep.
sense? So now
Absolutely.
nobody is
it's parasitic, right?
Yes.
And it's a sign of the demonic that it's vampiric, parasitic, and destructive. It doesn't create anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, you thought your problem was women, you removed it. Did it solve the problem?
No.
It's like what I said, libertarians. Let's suppose you remove the state. Does that solve your problem? Oh, well, no, because there's international global bankers that are now controlling anything, everything. So it didn't. Hey, Origin, you had a surgical operation. Did it solve anything? No, right? And you just go inward. Anybody left, you go after, right? So they're going after, and it's also what's the word? It's not only parasitic and vampiric and destructive, it's contagious. It's spread. Evil has to, you don't want to contain it, right? So like if anybody's ever gone through depression, right? It's not enough just to be like, oh man, like I'm just God, like in yourself. You want it to spread.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't make you happier. It doesn't alleviate any pain or suffering. It's the nature of evil to be a virus, to be parasitic and a virus and spread it. And so this is what's going on in these groups. These young men should just take a look and be like, what is it producing? It's not. Everything, that's why I said, everything that you're critiquing, you've joined that party, right? You don't like Skittles and you don't like the antinatalism movement. well, it's a culture of death, and you've joined another death cult.
Mm-hmm.
You don't like feminism. Congratulations, you have the same beliefs as the feminist.
Mm-hmm.
A destruction and abolition of the feminine. You're all the same. You're
One
all it's
one
crazy.
matching belief, I'm sorry to interject here, but that I find in feminism and red pill is that men can't control their sexual urges.
Yeah.
So that's one of these like things that they both agree on, which I don't think that's true.
No, it's not at
I
all.
think you can. But they're both going to argue on either end of this horseshoe that men aren't responsible for whatever they do sexually.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think I've asked anybody like, what would even make you think that? And furthermore, what if we codify that in law? Well, Your Honor, we want to convict him of grape,
Mhm,
but obviously we can't because every law implies an ought, a can or cannot, right?
mhm.
And so if you can't control, then nobody's morally culpable for acting on their passions, right? So
Yeah.
you might as well dissolve um the courts in law. I mean, think about this. Do you see that it's just so self-refuting, but it's also self-destructive. Like it would be anarchy.
Mhm. But you have big thought leaders now putting these ideas into the milieu, like Justin Waller goes on Michael Knowles, and they're both sitting there smoking stogies, and he's like, "You have to have a main plus five if you want to be happy." Right? And these are the conservative people who are going to help the West get out of our situation right here. And then you have, your Andrew Tate, who's like, why would you even consider living if you're over 30 as a woman? If you have no children, you have no like uh, place in society. And so these kind of ideas, what I'm good at is good at taking ideologies and to their very last extension of what does that mean, right? And if you cut if you let it run far enough, it's going to be something like Logan's Run. You've seen that movie, right?
Yep.
Like everybody dies or is recycled at 30.
Yep.
Remember that movie?
Yep.
So if we're going into a technocracy, if we're going into this like misogynist, like weird Chrislam idea that women are second class, then there could be things implemented. And I know you're going to say this is crazy, but look what they're doing in Afghanistan. That, women over a certain age are empty egg cartons and they are the useless eaters and they need to be, disposed of.
Yeah. I
I've
mean,
been called an empty egg carton. I've been called hit the wall. I've been called all of these things. And I've been on the internet since it was born. And only in the past maybe like 3 years have I gotten so much hate and anger. And I've been on the internet for like 20 years. So,
I was thinking too because this last Friday I was doing the continuing education inquirers catechesis classes for all three categories, and we're finishing up the sacraments, and one was the sacrament of marriage,
mhm,
and it was really cool because I got to talk about the proper role of what a man and a woman is in marriage, um, and all these issues that you're talking about. And if you take it out of that, you're going to have these perversions, and that um, God created man and woman, right? Woman from man, so you might not be alone. It wasn't simply so that so you could procreate.
mhm,
There's a mystical union, and that we're saved through one another,
mhm,
and that I have to lie down, even though I'm the head, I have to lie down my life for my wife. So there's no salvation and there's no love without martyrdom and sacrifice. And each that looks differently on each. But the value of my wife, I mean, many people know too, because of what the doctors did in Ireland, and her injuries, what they did to her. We can't have children. Does my wife not have a role in society? These people would say, yeah, like empty egg carton. Yes,
Well,
you're
they
out
would
of.
tell you go get a younger one that's not
Yeah,
broken.
exactly. Like, so this is divorced from the idea that my wife was given to me for my salvation.
Hmm.
Where is salvation in this? And if the woman is simply just object for the man to reproduce a likeness of the man, well, that's really what they think.
Hmm.
It's narcissistic. I want to see my image. Um,
My legacy, they
how,
call
how are you saved?
it.
Because everything's for you.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, there's only one thing you can do by you and by yourself alone, and that's go to hell.
Mm. Interesting.
And so you're on a pathway, a highway to hell.
Hmm.
So with this kind of attitude, our spouses are given for our salvation. And it's a natural blessing, a gift of God to be able to bear children. But uh, you know, things happen. People, you know, our hands and arms are given for life, and but sometimes we become maimed. And um, does that mean we have less dignity as a child of God? Does it mean that we're not capable of salvation because I lose a limb or something like that? No. So um, again, like I said, through all this, salvation's acquired by me. The Greek words kenosis, laying out, pouring out my life for my wife, while still being, we could talk about this, the head of the household.
Hmm.
As a man, I'm the head of the household, and what that looks like in Orthodoxy. Um, and if you don't have that conception of martyrdom and pouring your life out for the other,
Hmm.
more than you love your own life, then you love yourself and you're a narcissist. And the devil is the archetype of narcissism.
Hmm.
And you will be alone. You will be alone. That's what they want. Think about the picture they're giving you, a world where I'm by myself getting what I want. Congratulations. That's hell.
Hmm.
You can have it if you want it.
Hmm.
I suggest you not go that way, but that's what I see in the manosphere, the red pill. And by the way, Father Moses and I had this talk. It's very clear to us, especially as clergy, I can tell pseudos. I
Pseudo.
can tell fake, right? I can tell a pseudo intellectual, a pseudo man,
Hmm.
right? Andrew Tate is not a man. Um, he's actually effeminate. And so what do they got to do? Just like I was talking about, like leadership and what it means to be a true leader. If you're not a true leader, then you're a fake leader, and it's artificial what you do, and it comes off perverted. And people who have a little bit of discernment can spot the con and be like, there it is.
Um,
That person is not a man. I'm sorry. A
yeah.
bald head with a cigar degrading women doesn't make you a man.
I'm so glad you brought that up because a lot of complaints that I hear is that, my husband wants to be the head of the household, but he doesn't know anything that's going on in the household. He doesn't chip in. I'm not saying anything about my life. I'm saying just what I hear, right? The grievances online. They
Mm-hmm.
say he won't help with chores because that's emasculating. He won't help with kids because that's emasculating, and he doesn't want to help with kids. He just wants to do his job, if that, right? He just wants to go to work for 8 hours, come home, and sit down and be catered to. And that's the lucky ones, right?
Yeah, that's wrong.
And sit there and say, I'm the head and I want to be served, and like, I want you to plate my food for me and serve it to me on your knees and this kind of stuff. And women are like, I can't, literally, because I'm too busy, for
Yeah.
one. And you haven't earned that kind of treatment, for two. And it's giving Joffrey, honestly. It's giving like baby King Joffrey. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, what's Baby King Joffrey?
From Game of Thrones.
Oh, I've never watched. I've never
Oh.
watched. I told my wife the other day, I'm like, because when you turn on the TV, it has all the different streaming services. I'm like, I've never watched an episode of Game of Thrones. Like,
Mhm.
should I just to be up on the vocabulary?
Well, he was like a wicked spoiled. kid that was, you know, like a sociopath that became king at like age 12 or something like that. But everybody had to kowtow to him and his whims, even though he was childish.
Yeah, that's a great point. Think about this. That sort of relationship in the house, does it make the husband a better man? And does it make the wife a better woman?
No.
No, it makes it worse. There's going to be resentment. It doesn't improve. It doesn't make him a better man. Why are we engaging in anything that doesn't make us better? It's insane.
Hmm.
Um, and my relationship with my wife, she's the manager. You know, we were talking before the stream about managerial roles and stuff like that, but she's the manager of the house.
Hmm.
Um, I bless that.
Hmm.
It's great.
Hmm.
Does that mean that, you know, I get to sit in my room and just think about philosophical and logical arguments all day and go teach and then she serves me? No. Again, there's times where she's tired and doesn't feel well.
Hmm.
And I don't want to do it. And she'll be like, can you wash those dishes up? Can you feed the cats? And my first reaction in me is like, oh, here we go.
Right.
Gotta work, I gotta do. And then I realize it's because I don't want to do it. I should actually do it. That's a sacrifice. Quit being.
Hmm.
And notice I'm not being a man when I refuse that. Because when I look inward to me, I'm like, it's an effeminate baby that cries. Yeah, I don't want to do it. I don't do it like, and I'm like, so I tell myself when I'm tempted, man up and
Hmm.
lay down your life for your wife. If she needs your help, then do the dishes for her. Do
Hmm.
something nice. She's still the manager of the house. Like I give that to her. I'm like, I love that you organize my books, sweetheart. I love you can interior decorate, you can plan the food. That's the meals. That's
Hmm.
fantastic.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean you serve me and I don't do any work here. And guess what? It makes me a better man and a better husband when I take out do duties like that.
Hmm.
And it isn't trad and chad to be like, um, my wife serves me and everything. Why? First of all, why do you? The only people that need to make that public, the only people that need to be like, my marriage is so awesome. We're so trad and chat that I work all day and my wife serves me and does everything. Are people who are insecure, right?
Hmm.
Why do we have to tell people that? And again, I'm just sharing you. I'm not boasting. I'm just giving you like as far as like our marriage, just how this is just an orthodox way of living.
Hmm.
Um, Notice the difference between like the kind of overconfidence. I'm so Chad and trad. Look at like this. It's fake. I can
Hmm.
spot it.
Hmm.
Versus me just sharing my own struggles, um, and that I go through, but yet describing how a healthy marriage works within orthodoxy by giving an example of our own household.
Hmm.
That's a different. That's not boasting. It doesn't. It comes off authentic. I hope it does. It doesn't come off as fake and insecure, and I need to tell the world. And I don't usually, unless you ask me like this in the stream where it talks about like, I don't go around constantly telling people this stuff
Hmm.
because I'm not insecure about
Hmm.
it. Like, anyways, I don't know if that helps, but
You made me think of a somebody said guys want if they tell you they want a woman who works hard, that's a red flag because well the joke was why do you want something hard? But it's like for femininity to thrive, you can't put a bunch of labor on her. That's
yeah,
not how she is
no,
going to
no,
flourish, okay, with
yeah.
chores and errands. Now, in here, whatever
That's what a man does. That's how a man flourishes. So
exactly.
notice
A man gets
they're
stronger by resistance, but women do not. They get
no.
stronger through nurturing.
So
Um,
they're a feminist. They want to destroy the idea of the feminine, and make a woman a man.
They want the
Which sounds
princess
pretty gay
treatment.
to me.
Yeah, the man wants to be the prize. He wants the princess treatment. He wants you to, open his door and pump his gas and do all of this like crazy stuff. Here, whatever chores and food and errands I do, I get so much appreciation and thank you and kisses and hugs and oh, this food is great. You're the best cook. Thank you for keeping the, like it makes me want to do it more because he's giving me all this praise and he's appreciating. I know he can do these things on his own, not as well as I can, but he is so supportive of like my roles. Does that make sense? That I don't resent it because
Yes.
he is always grateful.
Yeah. And it's a way for you to voluntarily lay down your life in sacrifice. It's a sacrifice, right? And then
Domestic
if it's
labor,
healthy, then the other person appreciates and is like, wow,
yeah.
she didn't have to do that, but she did. Isn't that?
Well, let me tell you, it's like domestic labor is a sacrifice because how do I put this? You get no one's saying, "Oh yeah, you did the dishes. Here's some money. Here's some accolades. Here's some attention." Here, like no one's inviting me on a show because I kept the house clean. Okay, so for a woman, it's a very lonely. It's a very like self-sacrificial thing. It's draining. It's like it doesn't get you anything unless your husband is affectionate. He's the
Yeah.
only person that can make this worthwhile. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great point.
Yeah.
So the woman is not going to flourish and become more a woman by forcing labor and stress like a man would,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
A man thrives in that. Like I said, it is work on both ends, but it looks and there's management on both ends, but it looks different in different contexts because we're different, right?
Mhm.
You can't force, and I really think these red pill manosphere people, you don't realize this, you're trying to make the woman and your wife into a man,
Yeah.
and that is gay.
Yeah, they've recognized that. They're saying, "Why don't you just go be with your friends then if you don't like me at all?" I mean, Nick Fuentes had a joke about how he was going to marry a woman who doesn't speak English so he doesn't have to talk to her, but she can do all of the wifely duties at home. So and so many people are like following these personalities, and I tell you, a good percentage of the hateful comments I got for that Spider-Riz thing had Groiper in the
I know.
name.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I don't even get me started on the gropers. They'll probably, if I said anything, they come send an army to come get me. But yeah, exactly. Um, so, and I've got to think about this. I've been talking with the fathers of identifying these problems. We didn't do a men's retreat with the Orthodox Montanica this year, which gives we're gonna do, Father Russell commissioned me to do um one for next year. So I've been talking with the fathers. I'm like, what are we gonna deal with?
Mhm.
Like, what are the issues? And I've been honing in on this. Um, what does it mean to be the head of a household? What does it mean to be a man?
Mhm.
Uh, what about why you should stay away from um, these social media dudes?
Mhm.
That's not the way, brother. That's not the like. Um, Now, the problem is because they're eternally and constantly online. Anybody that spent some time with real men doing the stuff that we do
Mhm.
would be able to pretty quickly get the level of discernment to see through these idiots and be like, they're not real men. Like, why were we listening to?
Mhm.
The people that they capture in their attention are people who have not become men.
Mhm.
They have no compass. They've not made any accomplishments. They're insecure. They're probably addicted to stuff online.
Mhm.
Um, and they hate themselves, they hate the world. And I mean, think about it. This is exactly the perfect recipe for joining a cult, right?
Yes.
Like if you look at like people like they're traumatized, broken people who are
Yes.
totally lost, no compass, and no real role models in person in their lives. You'll end up in a cult. And unfortunately, in this day and age, we have a bunch of online cults, and they fall for it. They these cult leaders victimize these young, immature, kids lacking discernment and confidence. And so we need to get people plugged into real role models and doing real manly things to acquire the virtues to be like, I know how to treat a woman. I know what a right woman. That's what's so crazy is that, like, what are you talking about? You have this idea of what the right woman's going to be. You're a child, like you're a child. Like, how do you? You're not even a man yet. You can't have an idea of like what the right woman is. Like,
Right.
you haven't acquired any virtues whatsoever. And it's like you said, it's more this consumerist kind of satanic, individualistic attitude. Just take, me, path right into
What do
hell.
you bring to the table for me?
Yeah, what are you offering the woman? I live in my mom's basement. I'm addicted to video games and PORN. And I've never done anything in my life or acquired any masculine traits whatsoever. That's what you're going to offer. Oh, and spiders. But I can provide a full commentary on spiders. Congratulations. Which
Yeah.
I think is what your point. I mean, coming full circle to.
Right.
They just need a training program. I've done it with some of the guys up here and even coming to the conference. Do you know how to talk to a woman? Has anybody been doing this? Like, here's what you say. Here's how you treat a woman. Like, you've been spending all the time online. Stop listening to groypers and what's the bear? What's his name?
The bear.
They call like the people from bears. Why am I blanking on his name?
Dan. No.
Remember he went off on Jay for a while. Owen Benjamin.
Oh, that guy.
Stop listening. Stop listening to Tates.
Yeah.
Stop
Well,
listening to.
if you
So I have a friend that asked me, that struggles with this, was asking me advice on dating. This would be a perfect example of like what I would train men who are giving pickup lines through asking about spiders. Because my friend contacted me, he's like, I struggle, I don't have any success. Like, what's the formula? I'm like, well, let's just give you 4 points. Be confident, but not arrogant. Right?
Sigma.
What's Andrew Tate? Arrogant, not confident.
Yeah.
It's reversed.
Right.
Giving the con, that's what they call a con man. They're pretending to be confident, a confidence man, but they're not. And they hide it behind just arrogance. Number 2, be attentive and listen to her, but not passive. Number 3, be interesting, but not overbearing. I had to learn that. I almost messed up my first date with my wife by giving her a whole rundown on metaphysics and religion within our first theology quiz at the end. Number 4, be a gentleman, but not a simp. Those are 4, just, I mean, we could add on to that, but those are things if like in person, I would kind of like train a young man. Like, let's work on this and put it into practice. Anyways.
Sounds like we're getting close to our spider thing here.
You've got one too.
Yeah. Okay, one last subject, then we'll get to this and we'll wrap it up. What about age gap relationships, what are the ethics of that? Because they just in the Middle East tried to pass a law to make child brides legal as young as 9 years old, in accordance with the wife of Muhammad, who he married when she was 6 and they consummated when she was 9 or something like that. Um, so in the West, it's a big controversy about age gap relationships because the red pill is going to tell you wait till you're 45 and go get a 20-year-old.
Yeah. God, we had this experience. I'm not going to name the person, and thank God they got out of this. Had come to me, and they're like in their 30s, and they were like, "My wife's going to be a 17-year-old." I'm like, "What are you, a perv? Like, what's the matter with you?"
Yeah.
My first thought is like, you've been watching stuff online, like you're addicted to something online. That's my first thought.
Mhm.
Like, it's not a natural way of like thinking. So you were corrupted, and the person proceeded to argue with me, and I said, "You know what? I'm just a deacon. Go talk to the priest about this."
Mm.
And the person came back, so the priest said the exact same things that you did. I'm like, I know you. I'm not making this stuff up.
Yeah.
The, and he didn't know, and many people don't know, there are canonical rules on age gap.
Okay.
So I believe it is 10 years, you need a blessing from the bishop. Like if there's a more than a 10 years gap.
Mhm.
Now again, there's no hard and fast rule with the canons in Orthodoxy. They might look different in different situations because obviously it's like, yeah, but she's 70 and he's 80. It's like, okay, right? So a rule is a kind of guideline,
Mhm.
but no, the church does not bless out of hand a 30-year-old marrying a 20-year-old. It's
Mhm.
too big of an age gap.
Mhm.
And I can explain why. There might be some, again, rare conditions, but it needs a blessing. So guess what? This is the great thing about Orthodoxy. We all come in going, we should, the prescription. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, that's fantastic. We have people who are wiser, who acquired virtues and discernment that guide you through this. It's called the clergy, and they're tapping into a resource of over 2,000 years of tradition of wisdom, and so we can guide you through that. And so that's the first thing. I don't know what I'm doing with the marriage. That's a healthy attitude. I need help. I need guidance on, not, well, I know what I want and I'm going to get this girl and she's going to be, no. In fact, what as clergy noticed, and the priest had brought this up, especially at those ages, those age discrepancies, like let's say 30, and I'm just picking even numbers, 30 and 20,
Mhm.
you're at a very intellectually and emotionally in terms of maturity, different levels. And what the priest said, she will grow out of that. And because you're more mature intellectually and emotionally at 30 than you are at 20, you will naturally dominate the relationship.
Mhm.
But she will grow out of that.
Mhm.
And guess what? When she grows into maturity, she will resent you.
That is a huge point that I kind of wanted to add on because it's like if you're a 45, 50-year-old man and you're looking at girls in their 20s, okay, you're already old enough to be her dad, right? And like you said, she's going to grow up more and
Mhm.
you're going to be in the dad zone. You're going to be a provider. You're not going to be as attractive. You're not going to be as fit. You're not going to be as virile. So the older you get and the more rapidly you age, and then she's just going to be coming into her like, peak.
Yeah.
When you're ready to retire and sit around, she's going to have all this energy. She's going to be looking at you. Oh, he's got gray hair. He's got saggy balls. Like she doesn't not going to want to have anything to do with you when
And if you
10,
were
20 years.
dominating her, um, in kind of an authoritarian way, whether you consciously are doing or not, just because of the age, she's going to resent that. And resentment will destroy a marriage. And that's why most priests says most of those marriages failed. Like, that's why we don't prescribe that.
Mhm.
Now, there might be unique scenarios or something. That's why you would need to get counsel and a blessing to do. But
Because
again, it goes back to what you were saying. It's just to treat women as an object, and they're only there to, for eggs. And
yeah.
that's the argument that I heard from this gentleman. Thank God we just the person just got married, and there's little age gap, and it sounds really wonderful, and we're praying for them, and it sounds great. But the argument that I heard from a lot of these young guys is all in terms of sex, attraction, and bearing children. But
Mhm.
that's like one component, like that's just one natural component of the female. That's like if women took one feature, or if anybody just took one feature, let's say of the deacon, and be like,
Mhm.
that's all you are. So it's thoroughly reductive,
Mhm.
right? It's like, I'm finding one part about you, I'm going to reduce your identity. By the way, it sounds, now that I'm speaking about it, very modern and postmodern. This kind of reduction. I
Utilitarian,
pick out one part and I reduce your identity to this one thing.
right. Interesting. So it's true that if all men got together, they could force women to do whatever they wanted, right? And that's what you see in Afghanistan and
Yeah.
places like that, right? They're all men have banded together and this is the rule and you're going to follow it or we'll kill you, right?
Yeah.
So, what can we say to the West to kind of temper that sort of thought process from springing up inside a patriarchal system like Orthodoxy? Uh, how do we not end up with bags on our heads if we submit and we give our power to the man? And that's like a super risky thing that I don't think a lot of guys, like, it doesn't dawn on them that when you submit and you get married and you take on these roles and stuff like that, like, you're really sacrificing. Not that you're not getting a lot, but it's risky for her too, because now she doesn't have a work history. If he decides, "Oh, I'm gonna get a younger wife," and you're out, then she's been child raising for 20 years. She's not attractive anymore. She's old, she's tired, she's hurt, and she has no money, work history, savings, nothing. So, how can you tell girls, "Oh, just go get married and get a family and you'll be happy"? I just don't think it's that easy.
I mean, you've got to, it's really hard for me to just kind of generally prescribe secular marriages, because it's just, there's no prescription. There's no prescription because they're not orthodox. Like, kind of speak generally, like kind of like we did, like, look, lay down you know, your entire life and sacrifice for your wife, and these kinds of different things. But as far as the details of very specific prescriptions, they're not orthodox. I can't prescribe, and I know that I still want secular marriage, because I wouldn't want to be an abolitionist, is what I'm saying. So I don't have to fall into this either or. Obviously, I give prescriptions with it. I know it works in orthodoxy,
Mhm.
and I know it's a mess outside. However, there's still goodness even in the attempt in a secular marriage. There's still things in there
Mhm.
that I generally could prescribe, and I certainly want to abolish. That's why the church recognizes it's an attempt at holiness. There's some sort of sanctity to that.
Mhm.
So we can't just
Step
be
in the right
like,
direction, right?
yeah, it's in the right direction. It's similar to, Protestants too. Like, I can't say that like God isn't working in their lives and um there's no sanctity there at all. It's like, well, it's not the sacraments, right? Like, it's not what's happening in the church, but may God bring you into the ark, right? May you, like, I wouldn't want to abolish, like, again, secular marriage or something like that, but
Mhm.
it is really difficult and it is really risky.
Mhm.
And when problems come up, as far as the practicalities, it'd be like, I don't know what to tell. Like when friends like talk to me about marriage problems who are outside of orthodoxy, I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, become orthodox. Like, we can.
Right.
These things work really well because, like you were saying, the fear. Your community, it takes care of you. Your community is checks and balances.
Mhm.
So, although it's patriarchal, it's conciliar. Means women have a voice, and your community has the voice, even though the priest and the bishop are the head.
Mhm.
It's not authoritarian, and there's this really healthy conciliar and autocephalous as well checks and balances that, it's not algorithmic, right? It's not like a formula, like no marriages could ever go wrong. It's like, no, but all the right things are there to prevent the fears that you were talking about, if one wants that.
But it seems like they're always highlighting the risks for men and not for women, and then at the same time they're
Yeah.
telling women you are have no value if you are unmarried. So they're
Mm.
telling men do not get married, and at the same time telling women that you're worthless if you're not. So what do you do with
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, it's a contradiction.
And at the same time, it's like they say sleep with 50 women before you settle down. You've heard that, right?
That's the craziest. When we know scientifically, this was just brought up,
Hmm.
that will make, and both genders, um, you incapable of form. This is scientifically in a secular studies make it incapable of actually forming relationships.
Yeah.
The more that you sleep
For,
around, the
for
more
both men and women, right?
for
Because
both men and women.
it's funny when we're talking about red pill, it's different rules for different people. So rules for men and rules for women do not apply in the same way. Body count is one of them.
Yeah.
So apparently women don't care if men have a higher body count, which is stupid. I think all women care about that. It's just very nonsensical, and it's really disheartening as an adult to get online and see where the culture is going. Because I've seen psyops before. I've been doing this, okay, 25 years watching Operation Culture Creation play out,
Mhm.
right? And I don't know. I almost just want to like quit media altogether because it has become such a hostile environment. Like I get on Twitter and I post my thing and I get out because I don't even want to interact with that anymore.
Yeah, it's extremely hostile. And the algorithms promote hostility.
Yeah.
That's why you'd brought up the thing about the spider. Like, I'm always kind of shocked too that the things that get the most views and hate. I'm like, I didn't see that coming. Like, there's certain stuff that I know that, like, my wife or I call her my counselor, will counsel me and warn me, like, don't do it.
Uh-huh.
Know what's gonna happen. And I'm like, no, I got it, trust me. And then I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
It's exactly that kind of stuff. It's like, of course. But like you said, the one that I had was just made a joke about Aquinas,
Hmm.
um, uh, quoting, he was making an objection to his position. So it's not his actual position that, and he says the weakest arguments from authority are the weakest arguments, just as Pope St. Gregory says. I thought it was funny.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was his object, it wasn't his actual position. I got more hate. Like you said, I'm like, I don't know. I expected a couple people would say that, like, that's the objection, you stupid. I thought a few. I didn't realize half of the online Catholic world would come after me and start making fun of me, like, dude, you're an idiot. Like, this is, you can't even read. I don't know. I don't get it. But and maybe there isn't even an algorithm for the algorithm push because it's demonic.
Mm-hmm.
There's no rhyme or reason to. I know Jay and I always talk about this too. It's like this will pop up. There was no kind of prediction that this group of people would come up and all rise up in these different, because there is no rhyme or reason. The demonic is not rational. And so I definitely think this is what we're experiencing, the hostility and the irrationality, that there's no rhyme or reason to why this stuff comes up and why. But it's awful. It's like, none of these people would even say this stuff to your face.
Oh,
Like,
heck no.
and that's part of the problem too, is
Never.
the fakeness and anonymity.
Mm-hmm.
That, oh, cool, man. It's awful. And then it gets promoted. The
Mm-hmm.
bad stuff gets encouraged
Mm-hmm.
by algorithms.
And yeah, I'm reading a book right now called Why You Should Delete Your Social Media right now. And it was written in 2018. And so it's gotten 10 times worse than that. But yeah, he was a person who worked for social media companies. And he was like, this is incredibly harmful to your psyche, to society. It's probably everything that's wrong in the world. And he has all these reasons and data and
Probably the
facts.
cause of the rise of autism too. I
Yes, that's
guarantee.
why you're talking about spiders to your crush instead of just being normal. So if we can't force women ethically to bend to, a will of a patriarchy, then you're going to have to persuade them, right? And I think this is the heart of the issue because God doesn't force us to love him. He doesn't force us to participate. He persuades us through love, through,
Yeah,
logic, through like with patience.
examples.
Yes, he doesn't just knock us down and drag us into a cave and said, now we're married. He is there. He's like, he's God and he lets us choose him. So that's kind of how I see how it's going to have to go down with women. You can let them choose you or not. But there are things that you can do to make yourself more attractive and
Here we go. Yes, getting
worthy of having a family because I don't think that everybody deserves to get married and have children at this point.
Yeah, these people need to get the. By the way, I was just gonna say, and then you can pop up it'll be a great segue into the the thing that you have there to explain how you could better yourself. You know how my wife trusts me? I talked about this in the sacrament of marriage. Um, to be the head of the household,
Mm-hmm.
because I became the example of a head of a household. I became a right man. I'm not a perfect man. I'm not saying that, but the way that people will trust us, I'm not just talking about men, but anybody, is you become a trustworthy person. You become the incarnation of that virtue,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the persuasion.
Mm-hmm.
If women start, so this is a call to you men. You want to convince women and you want to have a pushback against what's actually happening in the world that we brought up, step up and become a man.
Mm-hmm.
Convince them by your actions and state of being and becoming a man. That's the best persuasion, right? How do I what's the best way to persuade people to Orthodox Christianity? Be a good Orthodox Christian.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that you can't do arguments and stuff like that and have verbal persuasion, but like that's your first things first. That's what I'd say. The reason why um, I trust Father Russell with all my soul is he's a leader. He's like, I'm like, there it is. Like, that's somebody, he doesn't even have to use any words. He doesn't have to force and tell somebody what to do. Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I believe in him. And I think that's what we men and those who are not yet men need to do. They need to become men, and we need to become more men. So that's the biggest persuasion. Anyways, go ahead, Jamie. Sorry.
Yeah. Uh yeah, because women have a biological rite of passage, right? Like there's a point where you were a child and now things are happening. You're obviously a woman now, right? But the only thing they teach men about becoming a man right now is don't be a woman, right? Like, and so it feels like that makes everything in their mind like feminine into bad,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And I hear a lot of traits like that's so feminine, lying, that's feminine, cowardice, that's feminine. I'm like,
I've heard that too. It's crazy.
I
I've
don't
even
think
heard this
those
in
are
Orthodox
female
circles.
things. Those are like asshole things. It's not because it's a feminine thing.
Yeah, my wife asked me this a couple months ago. She was like, "What's the Orthodox position on like are these things intrinsically like feminine traits?" I'm like, "No." I'm
Right.
like, "That's wrong." Like, I know there's people in Orthodoxy online saying this stuff, and I'm like, "That's crazy." Um, the whole point is that there are masculine and feminine traits. And when masculine take on feminine traits, that's not good,
Right.
right?
But they're
Um,
identifying the
but
traits.
lying isn't something like that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
essentially now, if a man lies, you may add like when you do that, it may make you look effeminate.
Mhm.
That's a difference versus like lying itself as an effeminate. It's like, no, that's not. And
Right.
all that means is that when you do a particular vice, you're perverting your nature. You're going to look like something else, like a beast, for example.
Right. Right.
But it's not that the things of the beast are. Anyways, good. I don't.
I know
I'm
what you
done.
mean. It's just like anything unvirtuous is now labeled as
Yeah,
feminine,
yeah.
right?
I don't
So
buy it.
in the spirit of persuasion, and I love love, I'm sort of a matchmaker. I'm good at that. I've made marriages, I've made babies, not myself, but people that I introduced are now married and with children. So I'm no like spinster weirdo, but I made this as a joke. It's just funny, you guys. It's not that serious, okay? But this is the spider's method to persuading women to your way of thinking instead of forcing them because that would be unethical, right? And the first point I put up here is sexual discipline.
I,
In
amen.
talking to women, this is your ace in the hole, okay? If you have this, you are already a Chad. You're Chad maxing. If you have this kind of discipline,
Yep.
uh, you're gonna be so much more comfortable talking to girls if you haven't been looking at naked ladies online. Okay, you're
Absolutely.
gonna know what to say. It's not gonna be weird. It's not gonna come across as you only want one thing. You're not gonna be creepy. Okay, here's the thing to avoid. Don't get the ick. Don't be creepy. Be cute. Okay. So if you're watching too much porn, if you're saying, join my polycule, if you're talking about polygamy is the God's way, all of these weird ideas, okay, it's not gonna fly. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It reminds me too. Do you remember? Was it Gladiator? I I can't remember now, but there's this like scene where obviously the emperor has the ability to kill, um, and thinks that his strength is in the ability to take one's life. And then I forget who. I'm probably mixing my movies and antiquity together, but says no. The power is to be able to do that and restrain from it. That's
Mm,
the power of a man, is that you have the ability to look up nasty stuff online, and be a creeper, and say weird stuff. Um, that's not manly. Manly is to have that power and resist it. because then that's real power. The other one's a passion, and you're a slave. You're it's not masculine to be a slave.
Right.
So absolutely, and it will come off. And by the way, I've seen it happen, but like where people just like, I've seen pickup lines from people that where I'm like, what in the world? Like it's totally perverted. I'm like, they're watching PRN online.
Yeah.
Like it's clear as day. Like it
And
just comes out of your mouth. Like I'm like, that was the stupidest, grossest thing I've ever heard in my life. Why? Because your heart and mind that you've been watching and downloading all that stuff into your soul, you idiot.
mhm.
So of course you're gonna come off as a creeper. Nobody wants a creeper
No.
around.
Nobody wants a gooner. Have you heard that term before?
No, that's a great one. A gooner.
Oh, okay. So yeah, gooning is just putting the corn on and letting it play and just sitting there for hours and hours and hours in some kind of like
Oh,
brainwave state. And the kids know about this. They this came from middle school, the slang of
yeah.
it
That's
called
so crazy.
gooning.
If you see, they do these reports of like when kids were first introduced to PORN,
Mhm.
and I'm just like, I cannot even believe that. That is so sad.
And
And
yeah.
one of the priests up here, his wife is works in pediatrics and with a lot of doctors, and is actually there's studies showing that the introduction at a young age hardwires not only one to be criminal
Mhm.
and vice, but also the whole trans and the Skittles stuff, like the introduction of, and what have I always said? Looking at PRN
Mhm.
will make you gay.
Mhm.
It will.
Yeah.
Congratulations. So they're all so afraid of like being like, well, I'm not gay. It's like you're gay. You're looking at like that's what it turns you into.
Yeah.
It turns you into a gay person.
Yeah. Yeah, and it makes you it makes you think that monogamy is
Weird.
something that is not attainable,
Oh yeah,
right? It's
absolutely.
unfair for
Yes.
evolutionary biology. In the red pill, they bring this up all the time. Evolutionary biology says that we should be able to have sex with whoever we want, whenever we want, however many times, up until whatever age, because we can still produce children. Um,
So crazy. I heard this even in Orthodoxy. There was a person, this was years back, called me up and we're all mad because the priest gave him a penance of a month, banning them from the chalice, but they had to come because they committed adultery.
they only got a month
And
for adultery.
I know, I was like, wow, man, that's
Pretty
pretty
soft.
pretty soft. And
Yeah.
you know what? It was like, you know what? Said the same thing. I'm a man with needs. This isn't fair. I mean, all these, and it was the same attitude you're describing. This priest has a family and has a wife that he can lay down with. And, I'm a man and I need, and I'm like, you're on the wrong path, brother.
Mhm.
And a month, first of all, you're not entitled to the chalice. What are you talking about?
Mm.
A
Mhm.
month is very lenient, like because the canons stayed a lot, many years. I forget what 14, like I forget what that many years. Like
Yeah.
that's a big sin. Like you can't. Anyways, guess what? The person found them their way out of. They allowed this in this narcissism to push them out of the church. They're no longer Orthodox. So,
Mm.
like I said, pathway to hell. Unfortunately.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of these red pill, like if you were to take the archetypal woman and man and they're negotiating this kind of relationship together, a woman's first point would be like, okay, monogamy. How about that?
Yeah.
And the man would be like, whoa, whoa, whoa,
Yeah.
slow down, pick something else. So the woman's thinking, okay, well, if this isn't monogamous, then it's not love. It makes this a whole different ball of wax, right? If there's no monogamy, then this is a situation. Okay, this is just a some kind of corporationship,
Yeah.
right? And so
It's a
then,
consumerist corporate, yeah, like it's totally secular and insane.
yeah, without monogamy, there is no marriage. That is the marriage.
Yep.
Wouldn't you say?
Amen.
So,
Yeah.
anyways, sexual discipline, number one. Number two, presentation. I had to make these fit in with spiders, but I'm I'm thinking like your how you look. I mean, that is important. Looks is a component of attraction.
And we don't
Now,
mean take a hammer to your face.
no, do not hit yourself in the face with a hammer. You can start by brushing your teeth and flossing because a lot of complaints that I see going
Oh
around
wow, I
online
didn't think
is
about that.
hygiene,
Yes.
right? Hygiene will take you so far in dating just because the competition is not up to par. Okay. Brushing teeth, washing face, uh, not oily hair, get yourself a clean pillowcase. Like all of these things are so simple for men to be attractive,
Yeah.
but they want to hit themselves in the face with a hammer.
Yeah.
Right?
Amen. Yeah, it's just like that's a great that's a great point, is just looking at some of these guys. There's like, you don't wash, you don't
Your
like
breath is funky. Your
your breath
posture
is,
is terrible. You're hunched over. You have that like laptop hunchback. Um, you need to wash your sheets and your pillowcases so you don't get all that acne
acne.
and blackheads and
And
yeah,
part of this goes into diet too, because you know that eat right.
yeah.
Um, avoid phytoestrogens as much as you can. Inflammatory foods, they're going to be causing bad skin, and you'll feel better. And if
Yes.
you look better, you'll feel better about yourself, and you'll have true confidence rather than fake. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, healthy people are attractive people. You don't have to be a supermodel Chad, okay? You just have to not have like
Yeah, the
toilet
bar set pretty low these days, so you don't have to
the bar
worry.
is on the floor, honey. Okay, so third, intelligence. Now, this is where you can probably start talking about your interests. If you like have a lady, let's say, let's go for a walk. And if you come across a spider, wow, look at this neat spider, right? What is your favorite spider? That is the appropriate timing, not like first meeting, right? All nerves, like me when I was trying to give that kid some candy bars and being like, let's talk about spiders. I mean, it's funny because it's immature, right? It's funny because it sounds like something your little brother would ask you.
What's their favorite spider?
I like their legs,
Yeah.
right? So, yes, intelligence is very attractive. This means it requires some discipline also. You don't want to be talking about Minecraft and Roblox
Exactly. Yeah.
and all of your other childish video games. Okay, and this is the thing that I wanted to say. It's like this is the time where you want to set yourself apart from boys. The courtship phase, the ladies are looking for maturity, okay? They're not looking to see how fast you can run in your new shoes. They're looking for someone who talks like a man, who has man aspirations, who has a man job, who has a man car. Okay, not little kids who talk about spiders. I know you guys think this is cute and maybe it will work on you, but think about when you were an 18-year-old girl or 20, if a 20-year-old boy came up and the first thing he says is talking about spiders, it's weird and funny. Okay, we don't hate you, it's just awkward. Does that make sense?
All you have to do is just ask to know the right sort of things to be intelligent about in your presentation. All you have to this is a really easy question. What are you interested in? Like what, hey, what's your jam? Like, and if you know a little bit about that, then you can talk.
Yeah.
And you're gonna be like, okay, so if she said this, that's not spiders. So maybe I should talk about this instead of,
Well, would you say that to a person you just met, no matter like who they were? You're gonna sound kind of off. You're gonna sound, is this
yeah,
narcissistic or what? Like,
yeah, like that would be like a tertiary like kind of question. like it's just kind of like a straight shooter. Hey, my name's so and so. I go to church here, and you know, like just a first things first kind of introduction, right? Just
Yeah.
it's good to see you here. Good to
Yeah.
see you in church.
Well, and
Glory to
that's
God.
why hanging out in groups is going to be helpful, right?
Yes.
At that age. So all
Because
the
it's natural. All the conversations will be natural. It doesn't,
exactly.
when you single a girl out and then have to talk, it's more difficult. That's why when I was in California, when I used to live in California and was doing kind of matchmaking, I just thought, let's just get young adults and go out and do stuff like bowling and different, miniature golfing or stuff. Like it'll just, the conversation will just naturally come up because there's other groups, right?
Yeah.
Then you can kind of go more kind of hone in. But yeah, absolutely. You're spot on.
Okay, how about diligence? Okay.
Diligence.
Do you have a work ethic? Do you sit around? Are you smoking weed in your mom's basement playing, video games? Uh and also when you are pursuing a girl, she's kind of wondering if you're pursuing just her or a lot of other women also. So if you can show her that, your intentions are pure and you're not just a Mac Daddy red pill Andrew Tate guy, she's going to be a lot more comfortable with you also. And also laziness is very scary to
Mhm.
women. There's a joke like women hate it when men take naps. No, it's just that when she's overwhelmed with her responsibilities and you're sleeping, then that's what you said, when that's when the resentment creeps in, right? So, I mean, this is just a joke. It's not like
No, it's good
the
though.
best
Like,
system ever. It's not the dentist system, but yeah, energy. Your energy, like your personality. What are you please love me, and like insecure and clingy, or are you confident? Do you have I was talking about this in relation to pearly things, and when we did a live, we were kind of cutting up about like people who get on the internet and just try to rile you up, right? Because they don't know how to get energy from other places besides upsetting people,
yes.
right? And there's a really good, it's a goofy new agey type of book. It's called the Celestine Prophecies, but he was onto something. He was like, people don't connect to source, so they walk around with their plug unplugged, and then they try to shove it into other people and draw their energy out. Because for us, the answer would be Christ. We get our energy from God, right? We get it from nature, we get it from our hobbies, we get it from our other relationships. But if you're walking around super desperate and you've been watching porn all day and you're just trying to plug into somebody else to suck out their energy, you're not going to be very attractive,
Exactly.
right?
Amen. Yeah.
Oh, and another thing about the sexual discipline, when I was going to say, is leading with sexuality is no fun for anybody. When you're overtly sexual all the time, it's really making people uncomfortable. Okay, it's not because you're hot, it's
Yeah.
because you have a hole inside of you that needs to be filled. And, you know, leading first with sexuality is really actually kind of embarrassing, and you're embarrassing us, men and women. Nobody likes it when the guy comes around and hits on their girls. Okay, nobody likes it when the girl comes around in her skimpy outfits to the Paw Patrol birthday party in like see-through mesh. Okay, they're gonna tell you to go home and change. So that makes sense.
Yeah. This is great.
And then for R, we've got, obviously the virtues, righteousness.
Yes.
Are you honest? Are you patient? Are you kind? Are you long-suffering? Do you attend church? Do you love God? Like, do you possess the fortitude that it takes to actually take a family to the end in a successful way? Right? Do you have anything to say about righteousness?
I mean, a good woman that you want to attract, that is attractive, is a good man who's acquired like virtue.
Yeah.
Um,
Honest.
women can pick up on that. Like,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Calm. Yeah. And then the last one was obviously sense of humor. Okay. If you can make a girl laugh, you can probably kiss
Absolutely.
her.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And this just like perfectly illustrated my point is that all these guys taking Spider Bro to heart and taking it so hard, you have
Spider.
no sense of freaking humor, man. It's just children. It's just courtship. It happens to everybody. You don't have to like commit uh seppuku just because you got embarrassed. It's not that deep, right? And nobody likes to be around an angry person. So if you don't take yourself so seriously, even if Spider Bro, ha ha, that was the dumb line I said 2 years ago when I was a young kid, and I like it, you
Yeah.
have to be able to laugh at yourself. Otherwise, you're going to be in some kind of weird demonic pride.
Yep. And then you'll be angry. It'll
You'll
all
be
come
angry.
out. Yeah.
Yes. So all of these people who responded to that in anger, probably that is their biggest problem. Like you're your own worst enemy, not being able to just laugh at something funny that I had no intent whatsoever to embarrass or shame anybody. Um, and they just got so butthurt about it because they're already angry.
And the other thing I noticed too is that I've always predicted that society would devolve to a point where people don't even get humor.
Yeah.
And if they do, they
Jade
don't
says that all
allow
the
it.
time.
They don't allow it, which is exactly, uh, whether somebody actually struggles with autism or not. Our society's become super spurgy, and it's just like nothing's funny. Like it's like you can't take you can't make light of yourself. Um, Everything's taken literal, and it's like, is it Guardians of the Galaxy? What's that big guy? That's just he's like the example of autism.
Yes.
He, what's that?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about because I have the same flavor of autism. Like sometimes I just do not get that you're joking because I take things literally first, and that kind of like plays into my sense of humor. If you notice how I responded back to the people who were being so aggressive
Yeah,
towards me. But yeah, sometimes the joke does not fly. So I get
my
that.
wife always has to warn me because I'm extremely dry and sarcastic in my presentation,
Hmm.
and she was like, "You got to be careful. Like most people don't get that."
Me too.
Yeah, so I'm like, yeah, it backfires on me half the time. But I just figure as long as I'm laughing inside, as long as I'm laughing, that's
Yeah.
all that matters.
Well, yeah, and I'll answer like hateful things in a literal way, and that's my sense of humor. Like the guy, somebody gave me all this gruff, and I was like, "Man, you must really like spiders," and that set him off even more.
Yeah,
Right.
that's funny, but yeah, all excellent points um that I would agree with.
And here's the thing, my old church, I knew two severely autistic people who got engaged to each other and got married. So it's like, and it was sweet, and like he wasn't weird. I'm sure he didn't
No,
like
I know. Yeah,
start out with spiders, and he's was the type of autistic that you need like a helper. They both
oh
were.
wow.
Yeah. And so since they were both in the same mental space, the priest blessed it. They were like able to be self-sufficient, like they could have a job, stuff like that. But yeah, so it's possible you can find your spider mate if you pray and go to church. And even if you do open with spiders, it's not the end of the world, right? Because that's where your sense of humor, anybody who can laugh at themselves is really attractive, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So
Yeah, that's a great.
anyway,
There's
that's
still you can use that and still come back. You could use the whole spider um buffoonery that you fell into as a joke
Yeah,
and
and
make
if spiders didn't work the first time, diligence, just try something new, man. Like you can erase that memory if from her mind if you just like keep on trying and be diligent, all these other things. I think that's all we had to talk about. Was there anything else you want to add?
No, it's very good. It was really wonderful purview of the entire landscape and so many topics there that, yeah, that's hopefully some may benefit from that advice and take it to heart and then practice.
Yeah. And
I know personally I was extremely insecure, um, both about my intellectual capabilities. I thought I was basically retarded,
mhm.
and and it basically was as far as like performance and looks. Like I just was not confident, and the only way that I got over that is I put myself out there and I practiced
Mhm.
until I realized, and it's kind of not taking yourself like it's like you'd point out as serious. I'm like, yeah, I made such stupid stuff and made mistakes, but the more you do and the more you just kind of practice in any social setting, it doesn't like just dating, it's you get better at it. And I was just like, yeah, this is what normal conversations like with people
Mhm.
and people of the opposite sex. This is what like, but I could only learn that and get over my insecurities by failing and throwing
Yeah.
myself out there and making myself vulnerable. And you just got to do it. There's no way around it.
Yeah. I went to a tour guide school once and they gave us that for homework. Like they're like, go out and, ask some people on a date or just ask for things that you think that they might say no, just so you
Yeah.
get used to that feeling of being turned down and you know that it's not the end of the world and you don't take it so hard when someone says no.
And then you realize too, the other thing is that nobody else, everybody else is so caught up in their own insecurities too. They don't even know. So we have this kind of projection of like, they've all got it together. I'm the freak and the weirdo. And, they know what it's like, they don't like, they're just like you.
Yeah.
They're just like, have the same insecurities, the same issues. And so, um, just get out there and, put yourself out there. You
That-
can't succeed in anything unless, you put yourself in a potentially, risky situation where it's like, yeah, I could drop the ball. I could
Mhm.
start in the, and we all do with everything in life. And then you
Mhm.
learn like that was dumb. I shouldn't have said that. Whatever. We can mull over it. I mean, I say this all, it happens all the time with me where I'm like, yeah, like maybe not all the time. I hope I'm getting better at it. But there's occasions where I'm like, God, I was so stupid. Why did I say that? Um,
Every time
and
I do a show, I
every time I do a confession, isn't it
Oh,
just
okay.
no, I was just gonna say anytime we all do confessions, isn't it like I'd said or did this stupid thing?
Oh,
And then I can mull over it
yeah.
and be like, what's the matter with you? Stupid,
Yeah.
right? Or it's just
That's
be
how
like,
I am. Every time I log off, I'm like, what an idiot. And I lay there all night thinking how stupid I am. But I just like get on with it because, lots of other people are stupid too. So it's working out. So thank you for coming. This was so
thank
great. I'll
you.
have to
It was
think
awesome.
of another topic for us to work on in the future if you'll.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, and God bless all of you out there in the digital world. And keep safe and do good, do better. You can always do better.
All
Yeah.
right. We'll see you spiders next time.
All right.